Okay, we now have a quorum. So I'm going to call this meeting of the Somerville School Committee to order. Could I get, oh boy, I'm already checked out. I'm already in summer mode. Can I get a roll call to make sure we have a quorum? Superintendent Skipper, please.
Sure. Dr. Phillips? Here. Ms. Krepshin?
Here.
President McLaughlin? Mayor Curtatone? Mr. Green?
Here.
Ms. Barish?
Here.
Ms. Patone? Dr. Ackman?
Here.
And Ms. Norman? We have a quorum.
Fantastic. We are going to start this meeting with a moment of silence and a salute to the flag. And I would like to dedicate this moment of silence to Mr. George Floyd, and also to Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery. And okay, so we'll have a moment of silence. And then a salute to the flag. Maybe we'll imagine the flag tonight. I think we can do that. Catherine, do you have one?
I'm having some technical difficulties. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay.
It is a difficult time, and we are all going to be kind and patient. It's maybe would you like another moment, or would you like us to proceed?
I am going to show what I have right now. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's all good. Thank you, Kat. Beautiful.
Perfect.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's hard to say and capture in words what's going on in our world, both locally, nationally, certainly nationally. And what I would say is, well, thank the superintendent and the mayor for putting out a statement earlier or last week about Mr. Floyd and justice and inequities and what we need to do. What I will say is, as a school committee member, as a leader, I've always taken my job to listen very, very seriously, and I think now more than ever to listen harder, longer, with more concentration to all the members of our community. So I would like to say that I am here and willing and ready and wanting to listen hard. And I would invite any of my school committee colleagues, if anyone else would like to say anything, please, Mr. Green, and if you can turn on your camera so we can see you while you speak too, that would be lovely. I would also like to say Mr. Green spoke eloquently, as he always does, with head and heart at last night's vigil. Mr. Green?
Yeah, which is actually where I'm gonna start. I spoke last night and I mentioned how tired I am of having to speak on this issue. So I guess actually I speak with a certain degree of happiness that in the weeks since Mr. Floyd's death, I think really lit a fire in people who may not have had one before. We have heard from students, from educators of color, from the STA, from the Somerville High Equity team, and they've all had a very similar message, which is, I think it's a message we all should be taking to heart as a community, which is that the work we have done in the last several years to censor equity, to name racial inequities as a central part of the problem of the district is good. But the time is coming, and I think the time is well past come for us to move faster. While it is 100% true that the issues of systemic racism that have developed over the country over the last 400 years took 400 years to develop, we do not have 400 years to fix them. And so it is incumbent upon us to be brave, be bold, be disruptive going forward, and really thinking through what does it really mean to not just not be racist, but to be actively anti-racist.
Thank you. Very well put. Would any other school committee members want to say anything? Ms. Krupchen and then Ms. Phillips.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this. I wrote out a few words, so pardon me if I just go ahead and read it. It's easier for me. Thank you. Like everyone here with me this evening, I'm heartbroken at the recent deaths at the hands of the police in our country. Sadly, I'm not surprised, but I am angry and ready to get to work. I won't pretend to have all the answers about what the Somerville Public Schools should be doing, but I pledge to listen and to speak out the concerns and ideas of people of color in our community who don't typically show up to our office hours and meetings. We've already pledged to do many equity-minded things in our goals, and I recognize that it can be hard to steer a large ship quickly, but I think we must double down in our efforts. Diversify our staff at every level, extensive anti-racism training for every adult that interacts with our kids, from principals to lunch aides, additional counselors to assist children who have been victimized. We need whole school curricula to create an anti-racist culture. I'd like to share the words of one of my daughter's 6th grade teachers. This is my 15th year as an educator, and in all of my years in education, I have been just about every student's first Black teacher. The knowledge and understanding of my potential impactfulness is not missed on me, and is a charge that I feel has greater reach than I can actively appreciate. Indeed, she is my child's first Black teacher. Having her as a teacher has been so important for all the kids, no matter what their skin color. And finally, representation matters. I implore us as a body to think about what we can do to make the school committee more diverse and better reflect our student body. Are there people of color in our wards who might consider running in the future if they had a mentor? More transparency and communication will help people understand what we do and perhaps help them imagine doing it themselves in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Krupchen. Ms. Phillips? Sarah, are you?
Sorry, I was muted.
Okay.
I'm going to read my statement as well. When I think about the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, I am crushed once again by the power of structural racism in the United States. As E-Viewing puts it, structural racism is the merry-go-round that we can't seem to get off. And as Ward 3's newly elected school committee member, I am humbled by the realization that I am now part of the merry-go-round, not just a rider. As I grapple with what to do and what to say at this moment, I keep hearing the words of Mario Savio, who in 1964 told protesters at the Berkeley Free Speech movement, "There's a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels. You've got to make it stop." I know that many of you share this sentiment. Those of you who are listening in the community, our youth who are here to advocate against police in our schools, and my colleagues who have spent the past year establishing goals and crafting policy that make clear equity is a core value of the Somerville Public Schools. But I want to use my time before you today to talk about one area where I think we as a community could do better. While districts across the country and the Commonwealth brace for mind-blowing budget cuts, for layoffs of up to half their teaching staff, while our own city contemplates a 20% drop in revenue, we are aiming to level fund our schools. This is a huge win. And we are blessed to have a supportive mayor and a superintendent and finance director who are reshaping the school department's budget with a scalpel in ways that enable us to fund desperately needed family support and mental health positions in the coming year. But at this moment, this unprecedented moment, when people, disproportionately people of color, undocumented people, poor people are dying, when they are hungry, when they are alone, isolated in their homes or out in the world doing essential jobs without adequate protection. When kids can't participate in school because they are still without internet, we are not doing enough. Level funding our schools is not enough. 60% of Somerville students are people of color. 60% are classified by the state as high needs. There just is no way that a 1.67% increase in the school department's budget is going to meet the social, emotional, academic, and physical needs of our students and families next year, let alone make up for 400 years of unequal treatment under the law. If we want the merry-go-round to stop, if we want to ensure that every student gets what they need to thrive regardless of where they come from, if we're going to combat structural racism compounded by the disproportionate effects of coronavirus, our schools need more money. We need more social workers. We need more teachers. We need more partners who can provide food, housing, employment, and health services for our families. A level service budget might maintain the status quo, and in this context is a huge victory, but it won't enable us to disrupt systemic inequality. And that's why I'm urging the mayor to find additional funds for our children, our families, and our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips. Ms. Barish?
Hi, thank you. I just want to say I thought a lot and struggled a bit with what the right thing for me to say is here tonight. I'm going to keep it simple. I'm not as eloquent as some of my colleagues or as knowledgeable as some of my colleagues, but I believe that Black Lives Matter. I hope that as a nation, we're at a turning point now. That said, I know that it isn't enough to believe and to hope. I need to act. I need to listen and to learn. I need to use my position and my privilege when I can to amplify the voices of those who are most harmed by the injustices of our racist system. And I need to do courageously and boldly what I can to help dismantle that system. These are my intentions. I look forward to working with my colleagues who are just as ready and probably more prepared to do those things. I'll probably make mistakes, and when I do, I'm going to listen and learn and try again and try to do better. I'm, like others have said, heartbroken, but also so glad that this is becoming so important to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to say anything? Okay. Well, I will speak on behalf of all of the school committee members. It is not enough just to profess our values, and it is a time to double down, live our values, and really put more into place. So thank you for all of those comments. Before we go to the awards, I forgot the blurb I was supposed to read at the top, so I'm gonna do that, and then we will get to celebrate some of our amazing students. So Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GLC 30A S18, and the governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, as well as Mayor Curtatone's declaration of emergency dated March 15th, 2020. This meeting of the Somerville School Committee will be conducted by a remote participation. We will post an audio recording, audio, video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of these proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting on the City of Somerville's website and local access government channels, SCAT. So forgive me, I didn't do that at the beginning, but now we are procedurally all caught up. And now one of my favorite things to do is celebrate our students. And so the awards and citations, in this Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents Awards. Superintendent Skipper, would you like to present our amazing students?
Thank you, Chair Norman. So if I could ask our two students, Luca and Natalie, if you could turn your webcams on so that we can see you.
Yay.
Yay. Okay, great. So traditionally, the or the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents Award is given to the 2 highest academic achieving students in our district. And so these 2 are valedictorian and salutatorian. We welcome. I'm going to read a short summary that's been provided from each of their school counselors. So in the case of Luca Duclos Orsello, who is valedictorian at Somerville High School, Jeremy Rochelle, his guidance counselor, provided the following proud words for our student. If asked, most staff will comment that Luca is one of the best students they have ever had the pleasure of teaching. His insightful comments during class and his ability to ask thoughtful questions convey a profound level of understanding that sets him apart from his peers and makes him an elite student. Luca has taken the most rigorous curriculum track our high school has to offer. He is passionate about world languages and has found creative ways to take 3 world languages, which is something that really happens given schedule constraints. Even when Luca found out our school would not be offering a French course, he took it upon himself to find a course outside of our high school so that he would be prepared to take AP French course the following year. It became evident at this point that Luca would do whatever was needed in order to continue to take these courses. At this time, he mentioned he started thinking about international relations and diplomacy. Luca has mentioned to me his interest in this subject area was due to him wanting to help those who cannot help themselves around the world. Luca says he wants to be able to understand the inner working of different political systems and why certain inequities exist and how he can use a political influence to make change. Luca is a passionate student who is very involved with extracurricular activities outside of school. His involvement in athletics and spending countless hours volunteering his time is very important to him. These experiences have made him a natural leader. An example of this during Luca's freshman year, he wanted a place where he and his peers could play handball. Given our school did not offer this as an intramural sport, Luca took it upon himself to find a way to bring handball to our high school. With no resources and very little adult support, Luca came up with a proposal for our principal and found a way to get volunteers to come to our school and start this club. What was even more impressive is that Luca found a strategic way to fit this into our budget and created a specific report detailing how much this club would cost to operate and how our school could raise additional funds to start the club. Luca, during this time, I know, gained valuable skills which will undoubtedly help him with future endeavors. This experience, I know, has shaped and molded him into the leader he currently is. That was submitted by your counselor, Mr. Rochelle. And as I understand it, Luca will be attending Brown in the upcoming year. First of all, let's give a big round of applause, virtual, to Luca. And Luca, if you just would like to say about where you're going to be going and what you're thinking of potentially majoring in, why it's important.
Yeah, sure. So I'm planning to go to Brown University in Providence. Hopefully I'll actually be able to go there in the fall, but we'll see what happens. I'm really interested in double majoring in political science with the track in international relations and French. However, I also want to do a minor in Spanish because I've been taking Spanish in the Somerville school system since 6th grade. And my goal, as Mr. Rochelle, I guess, did a pretty good job of summarizing, is really to help people who are disenfranchised, who are left out of the system. And I think, especially at a time like this in our country, we need people who are going to step up and actually do the work that's needed to create the change that this country needs to get to the future that we all want to be in. So that's my goal.
Well, thank you for sharing that. We're really proud of you, and it's wonderful to think someone of your talent is going to put their talent toward helping others and to fix some injustices that drastically need to be fixed. So thank you very much, Luca, and congratulations.
Thank you.
And our second student, who is our salutatorian, is Natalie Morgan. And Natalie's detail was submitted by her school counselor, Ms. Keemon. Natalie's outstanding contributions at Somerville High School will not be forgotten. Not only is Natalie an outstanding student challenging our most demanding academic program our high school offers every year, she also is earning her and has earned her the honor of salutatorian, but she has also devoted countless hours since 9th grade participating in our high school musicals. She's a member of the Highlander Theater Company and is a 3-star thespian in the International Thespian Society, which translates to over 300 hours of quality theater work while still in high school. She was inducted her junior year into the National Honor Society. Her talent is well recognized and appreciated throughout the Somerville High community. It is well known that participating in theater involves an incredible amount of time and dedication. Yet in addition to an already packed schedule, Natalie is also the captain of the girls' ultimate frisbee team and a second-degree black belt in Taekwondo. She has worked as a junior instructor for Taekwondo Boston and also holds a part-time job as a barista for Starbucks. Natalie will attend Smith College in the fall. So Natalie, congratulations. A big round of virtual applause for you.
Thank you.
Natalie, would you like to share a little bit about your plans at Smith?
Sure. I'm going to Smith in the fall, hopefully, actually be on campus. I am kind of undecided about what I want to do, but I know that I'm interested in science and biology and environmental science, and I took environmental science this year, which really made me think about how I can help contribute to creating a more sustainable world and being able to try and reverse a lot of the damage that's been done by climate change, and how I can help that. And also kind of related, hopefully continuing with Spanish, because like Luca said, I've been taking Spanish since 6th grade in the school system, so I'm really hoping to continue with that and being able to study abroad to both hone my own Spanish, but also help environmental problems abroad.
Oh, that's wonderful. Again, just wonderful that you're going to put your talents toward such causes. One thing about your class of 2020 at Somerville High School, it just has left a legacy of advocacy toward important global topics. So we thank you for your achievements, and we look forward to following you and seeing all of your accomplishments in the future. Chair Norman, I don't know if there's anything you want to say.
Are you kidding me? An opportunity. So first of all, both of you as individuals, right? Not slackers. The depth and the breadth of what you have devoted yourselves to, both academically, athletically, artistically, it is really something. And that you are, both of you, the common theme are what can I do to make things better for other people, right? And this is, the superintendent did say, this is a class that has been real leaders over the years, gun violence, many different topics. And so thinking of others and leading by example. I also wanted to say, this class is led with real grace and maturity through what has been a very difficult year. The different locations, the losing of Mr. DeSimone, the school closures, what's going on in the world today, and it is not lost on us that after years of experience, so many of the beautiful Somerville traditions and celebrations of the two of you and your peers were not able to do in person in the right way. And it took a lot. I have to say, I've been so impressed with the way that students have handled their disappointment and yet still found joy. So I have no doubt that you will go on to do great things, and I only ask that you will come back and visit us and tell us what you're up to. Would any of my colleagues like to chime in? Normally, if we were in person, we would take a recess and we would come and congratulate you and your parents. It is anyone, but this is such an awkward forum. Well, okay. So on behalf of the entire school committee, thank you for working so hard and doing it with joy and being real leaders. And we wish you all the best. And I really do hope that you will be on campus in the fall.
Chair Norman, can I say a few words? This is Principal Lagabina.
Principal Lagabina, that would be fantastic. And if you turned on your camera, we'd be even more thrilled.
There you go. Thank you. I just want to congratulate Luca and Natalie. You know, their presence at Somerville High School has made it a better place for the work that they've done to contribute to the high school. And I know it's similar to what you said, Carrie. Wherever they go, that place is going to be better because of their presence. And so I just want to congratulate Luca and Natalie, wish them the best. And If you ever have an opportunity to return to Somerville and contribute to this community, again, you'd be welcome with open arms. And I just want to wish you the best of luck. And thank you for all that you've done at Somerville High School and for Somerville High School. And wherever you go, that place is going to be lucky because of your presence. So thank you.
Thank you for those words. I'd also like to just take a quick moment to thank Mr. or Principal Lagambina for leadership during an extraordinarily difficult year that just, when you thought it couldn't get any more complicated, it got that much more complicated. And he, with a team of others at the high school and on the city side and the PTA, have figured out ways to celebrate our students, whether, the senior banners are all over the city. It's been sort of a big Where's Waldo, but also we are going to be able to celebrate our students over 2 days, this Wednesday and Thursday, in person, in a very controlled, very safe way with no handshaking. And so I really wanted to thank Mr. Lagambina for making that happen, because it was no small feat. So thank you all.
Thank you for the support of Superintendent Skipper and the school committee. I'm very excited for Wednesday and Thursday. I hope the students are. I am extremely excited. It's the best that we could do under the conditions, but I am very happy and excited to be handing out those diplomas on Wednesday and Thursday, even if it's leaving it on a table for a student to pick it up.
With a lot of hand sanitizer available. It's going to be great. Thank you so much. So we will see you Wednesday and Thursday. Thank you for joining us, and thank you and congratulations again.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next is the report from our student representatives. Kat and Natalia, I think we can only have the audio of you right now. Is that correct? And if either one of you wants to jump in, and can you please introduce yourself so that the people listening and watching know who they're hearing from?
Hi, my name is Ekaterina. I go by Kat. Can people hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So my name is Ekaterina. I'm the student representative for the school committee. I'll let Natalia introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Natalia. I'm also a representative of the school committee.
Welcome.
Student representative.
So what are you hearing? What would you like to share with us?
So today I'll be starting. I just wanted to share a bit about our students' response to the deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery. So as we saw, the 50 states of our country came together for protests and riots and petitions and vigils, including the one that we had yesterday, with the wonderful presence of Mr. Green, as well as an alum of Somerville High, Kenya. And it was absolutely wonderful. People came in really good spirits. I was personally there. I had a good time. It was very well organized. So congrats to the organizers of that event. I'll definitely be following up with them more now. And also just the amount of support I've seen for the movement on social media on behalf of our students. For like the week after the murder happened of George Floyd, all I saw on my social media was, how can we sign petitions? What protests can we go to? How can we spread awareness? There was just like a wonderful initiative I saw from the Somerville High students. And I personally was involved in a number of conversations from community groups such as, well, there was some Boston ones, Civic Youth Summit. I was participating in the calls with the history department. Mr. Ensdorf led one. Ms. Santos was there. So it was personally healing for me, and it was helpful to be around other people who wanted to speak on those issues. So I personally really like to see the response that our community had, and I hope, addressing all of you who are people in power, that we continue this momentum, that we realize that these issues don't stop with a couple of protests. That the murders of George Floyd may be arrested or charged, but that doesn't mean that the issues stop there. So I love everything that we've been doing, and I hope that we continue to respond to these things and to address them.
Thank you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. So today I will be reporting on what's going on with the seniors and what's happening with them. So from what we've heard earlier, the seniors are going to have a ceremony, but due to coronavirus, I believe the ceremony was cut into different parts depending on last name to minimize the exposure. Students will be able to drive up alongside with a few family members and get their diplomas and feel special during these hard times. I have also seen students receive their own gift bags, so with their cap and gowns and merch from the CTE program, if they were in the program. The students from the CTE program have also received awards for completing the program and congratulating them. I have also seen the seniors have gotten their own banners hung all around the city recognizing them, and I think it's really cool to just walk down Broadway and get to see the students, so that's great. Lastly, the Instagram account SHS Senior Spotlight is still posting in case anyone wanted to check it out. So thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Is there anything else either of you two would like to contribute tonight? What I will say is, as always, and probably more now than ever, is we're going to be looking to you to and listen hard as people, to women of color and leaders in our high school. And the conversation, it doesn't stop even though the school year ends, right? In many ways, the work is just beginning in some, and you two will be playing a key role, but also I would encourage any student, whoever wanted to come and speak at public comment, which we have at the beginning of every full school committee meeting. School committee has met with teen empowerment, but also if we've been at different times invited to different groups or classrooms. We are all wanting to hear more, especially from our students and our educators, and how we can continue to be better and do better. So thank you so much, you two. You have added a lot this year, and I look forward to having another year with the two of you and see what amazing more things you guys are going to do.
Yeah, I'd like to second that. I think you've added just such a breadth of leadership on the student side with how you check in with the other students and you bring forward issues that are happening. You're not afraid to speak to things that aren't comfortable or aren't to be able to talk about something that's not working well. And I think that's important. I think that your leadership in bringing those issues forward help Mr. Lagambina to address them, help me to address them, and school committee to address them. So we've been really fortunate to have you, and I know both of you have incredibly busy schedules, probably more so than anyone else, but you still find the time to come and you still find the time to update. So keep doing that. It's wonderful to see you in the leadership. And next year, as soon as the seniors graduate, you are the leaders. So some of that. So we'll look forward to what's in store for that for next year.
We have, I would like you two to hang on tight. I'd like to say that the President of City Council, Matt McLaughlin, has joined us. I think he just left the weekly health meeting of the city. So I don't know if this is his second or third meeting of the night, but welcome, Mr. McLaughlin. And then Ms. Krepchen has a question, and then Dr. Ackman. Ms. Krepchen?
Thank you. First, a quick comment that I've been following the SHS high school graduate feed on Instagram, and it's one of the highlights of my day. So thank you, Kat Natalia, for letting us know about it. I've been really enjoying it. And then also, I just wanted to ask you quickly before you guys left, if you have any thoughts or what your feelings are on the movement to get the police out of schools. I know this came up last night for Kenya at the rally, and I know it's something we're all thinking about and going to talk about at some point. So I just wanted to know if you guys had any feedback or what your thoughts are.
So it's definitely something that has been discussed, especially I'm part of the BSU, and they've talked about that a lot, about how a lot of times, well, they talk more about the security guards, to be honest, but it's definitely something that's been talked about. I have yet to form a concrete opinion, so I'll love to get back to you on that, but it's definitely been addressed by our students.
Can you say quickly what the BSU is? For those at home who
Oh,
don't know.
Yeah. So it is the Black Student Union at our high school, which mentors Miss Maslon and Miss Wooten.
Thank you.
So I have heard a few comments from my peers about if we should have like police officers in the school or not. I've heard some students say I feel safer when they're there. I've heard some students who are like, I don't feel safe when they're there. But for myself, I feel in order for me to feel safe, I need to have a bond with the police officer, or at least know their name, because I've seen like many students talk to the police officers, but I have no clue who they are. Like, I've never met them, and I've been in the school for 2 years. So sometimes it's a little hard to build that trust with them. So that's just my opinion on it.
And that was Natalia. It was Kat first and then Natalia.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is, again, always such thoughtful comments. Thank you for that. Dr. Ackman, did you have a question? And then we'll have a comment from Mr. McLaughlin.
I really just had a comment. I want to thank our student reps and thank you for continuing to come and inform and speak your minds and give the superintendent, your principal, and us honest feedback. It is so incredibly useful. It is so incredibly important. And we are very lucky that you are taking the time to help us. So thank you for the work that you do for your community, the work you do to support us, and keep up the great work. And if there's things we can do to support you, please do not hesitate to ask. Thank you.
Absolutely. Mr. McLaughlin, would you like to say something?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank you. I just walked in and heard the most important conversation, I think, for the night. And I just really wanted to thank the students for bringing this to our attention and for having a balanced opinion on it. I'd be really interested in learning more from you and from students at the school, so I just want to put that out there. If anybody ever wanted to meet with me remotely, I could give my contact information. And definitely important, I know, to the school committee and the city council to have people of color at the front of all of this and address your concerns. So I'll leave my contact info. I'd love to talk more.
Thank you for that, Mr. McLaughlin. And that is, I echo that too. When I went to visit the Black Student Union, was it last year, this year, in person, I think conversations are much more or easier than this forum, but we will use this forum and any time here to meet and talk. So, and we will make sure that you have Mr. McLaughlin's contact information. I think you have mine too. So, Mr. McLaughlin, we will make sure that Kat and Natalia get your information.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions for our students? Okay. Now moving on to item number 4, approval of minutes. There are 2 sets of minutes. Can I get a motion?
So moved. This is Andre Green.
Second, it's Alana Crepton.
Thank you. There's a motion by Mr. Green, seconded by Ms. Crepton. Is there any discussion of the minutes from February 3rd, 2020 and February 24th, 2020? We need to do a roll call vote on all online. So can we get a roll call vote for the approval of the minutes, please?
Certainly. Dr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Crepton?
Yes.
President McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mayor Curtis-Lee? Mr. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Parrish?
Yes.
Ms. Patone?
Yes.
Dr. Ackman?
Yes.
Ms. Norman?
Yes.
Motion carries. Minutes have passed.
Thank you very much for that. We will now move on to item number 5, public comment. And I just want to make sure, I only saw 2 names, Michelle Lippens, president of the CPAC, and Karsten Frey. So I have to read my little official statement, and then we will get right to you two. So speakers are allotted 3 minutes each to speak, though depending on the number of speakers, the chair has the discretion to limit comments to 2 minutes. Public comment is not a discussion, debate, or dialogue between citizens and the committee. It is a resident's opportunity to express his or her opinion on issues of school committee business. Public comment is intended for the school committee to receive input from the public, but not as a method to receive specific requests for which should be channeled through the school and district leadership or individually to a school committee member. To this end, members of the committee will not reply to public comment in the course of a meeting, though individual members may follow up and items from public comment may be taken up in future meetings. The committee and/or administrators will not be prepared to directly respond to citizens' questions posed to them in this forum. To ensure multiple opinions are heard on a given topic, we only have 2, I think will be covered. For other reasons, the chair may call on speakers outside of the order of the sign-up sheet. Public comment is not an opportunity to speak specifically about employees of Somerville Public Schools in any way that they can be identified, and any attempt to do so will be immediately ruled out of order by the chair, and the speakers will not be allowed to continue. Interpretation services in the district's identified target languages of Spanish, Portuguese, and Haitian Creole will be available whenever possible, and residents are expected to give at least 3 business days notice if they need interpretation. So with that, Michelle Lippin, and if you, I don't know if you can turn on your, no, I don't think you can no. So Michelle Lippin, can you say a little bit about yourself before you speak, so where you live?
Oh, sure. Yeah, Michelle Lippins, 24 Thorpe Street, Somerville. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry. I want to begin tonight by applauding our incredible educators, paraprofessionals, specialists, administrators, and all our staff members for their dedication, professionalism, and hard work all year, and especially now. I'm addressing you today as the co-director of the Somerville Special Education Parent Advisory Council, although I'm also a mom of 3 SBS kids, 1 with special needs, and a special education teacher. With permission, I am also representing the perspectives and statements from the LPAC, or English Learner Parent Advisory Council. The intent is to raise the voices of our students with special needs and our English language learners and their families. Remote learning is not working. We need to think creatively and consider those populations that are most impacted. Since 2018, a diverse group of immigrant parents has gathered together bi-weekly to learn and advocate on behalf of English learner students and their families in Somerville as part of the LPAC. We want to first recognize that there is a lot of loss right now for everyone, but immigrant families represented by our group are the most impacted right now and are struggling. Some of our families have children with special needs, and this is especially hard. We know that learning is not easy for anybody. Many of the immigrant families engaged with LPAC and supported by parent leaders don't have the skills to navigate the internet. We want to ask, if you aren't good with technology and you haven't had the chance to have an education yourself, how can you educate and support your child at home? We feel that it is very, very difficult to do so, and we ask that as a committee you will help make sure that these families we represent have the resources they need to learn and thrive. For us, this means helping families meet basic needs because many immigrant families are out of work and unable to pay rent. This is extremely stressful financially as well as psychologically for parents and children. We ask that you prioritize parent leaders, family liaisons, and other direct supports. These staff members are essential for making sure families understand and have access to available resources in addition to knowing their rights both in our schools and our city. Our students with special needs and English language learners have a greater need for face-to-face instruction as remote learning has proved extremely challenging. However, a plan must be put in place to protect our medically fragile students with more significant needs. Additionally, we ask you to consider, oh, sorry, darn, hello? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought my time was up. Additionally, although these students may have demonstrated proficiency in English, their immigrant families are disproportionately affected by COVID-19 and the economic devastation left in its wake. Our families want to support their children's learning and are going to great lengths to do so. Still, their efforts cannot compensate for the enormous inequities they confront. As a school district, you have the power to prioritize students that require more attention and a different methodology of learning. Social skills cannot be built remotely. We can't assume that by providing technology and internet access, we are closing the divide. It still exists, and we must do better. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Lippin. And as always, we encourage anyone in public who's made public comment, if you want to send your written comments to me, I can distribute them to the other school committee members and make sure they become part of the record. Thank you so much, Ms. Lippin. Karsten Frey? Are you still with us?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. You'd like my name and address first?
Please. Yep.
Great. Okay. My name is Karsten Fry. I live at 150. No problem. I live at 152 Walnut Street. Thanks for letting me speak tonight. I'm a high school educator in the Boston Public Schools. In this crucial moment in history, when mainstream America, aka white America, is having a wake-up moment and finally realizing that the police are largely a terrorizing force against people of color, it is time to take decisive action. That action is this. As a first step, eliminate the STEPS program and use the money saved to pay our paraprofessionals in Somerville a living wage. According to the website of STEPS, its purpose is to establish, quote, long-term real connections between youth and law enforcement. And it, quote, aims to foster trust and positive relationships between young people and police officers to help young people grow into responsible and successful adults. Which, by the way, sounds like a job description for teachers, counselors, and paras. Not what I would think about a police officer is supposed to be doing. Just like the rest of us, young people were subjected over and over to the traumatizing sight of a white police officer slowly torturing and killing a black man, while 3 others looked on approvingly. The illusion of a benevolent police force that white people of privilege have held up for generations now lies shattered like shards of glass on the pavement. Police are not here to be our friends. They are not credentialed to be educators or counselors. They are armed, they are dangerous, and as an institution, they are clearly racist. Eliminate the STEPS program immediately. Stop patronizing students by promoting the absurd idea that police are benevolent. Young people see the lie for what it is. Take the funds that are saved by limiting STEPS to pay the paraprofessionals in Somerville Public Schools a living wage. They currently make a starvation wage of $19,000 per year. Eliminate STEPS, pay paras a living wage. Thank you for taking my testimony.
Thank you so much. And if you want to send in your written comments to us, they will be entered into the record. If not, that sort of a summary of it will be. So with that, we are now onto the report of the superintendent. Superintendent Skipper.
Yes, thank you, Chair Norman. So tonight we have several things under our report. The first is we have as guests, and I would just ask them to turn their webcams on, Principal Soto from the Argenziano and Principal Hurry from the Kennedy. You could turn your cams on. So this follows with being able to sort of hear from our principals, you know, their experience, what they've been working on with their communities relative to remote learning, and certainly, you know, over the last couple of weeks, the issues that have, you know, the emotional issues that have come about through Mr. Floyd's death and killing. So I don't, for either Mark or for Glenda, whichever would like to start. But they're both.
Go ahead if he wants.
Sure. Thank you for welcoming to your meeting tonight. I would just say a brief overview is that we have found in remote learning at times to be some incredibly inspiring learning experiences. I can understand that remote learning looks different, it can feel different, but through that there's opportunity. At the same time, we've had live science lessons that included baking with families. We had over 100 students in the middle school participate in small group reading circles remotely. We found many of our special education students have benefited from the small groups being created, the one-to-ones that many of our educators have offered. And we've also learned that there's a lot of opportunities for growth. key things that we've talked about. I sent the reports to the school committee, both on our findings and recommendations, but just briefly, one would be a centralized learning platform for teachers, parents, students to navigate sites, passwords. We're already in action steps to create that and to provide local enhanced professional development to not only teach the technology and skills, but just the savviness. There's some teachers are really, not only through hard work and effort, have really created some really inspiring learning experiences. I would just say through this, it's been difficult. We've always tried to respond with grace and equanimity. My comfort food is data. So we've done a lot of survey work. As a learning institution, we're committed to learning. And if we come back to this in the fall, it will be different. We will be proactive. We will be prepared. Through action planning, we will have impact, and we'll be proud to create a quality instruction that our families have been accustomed to. While it will still be different, we're going to get there.
That's great. Mark, what I'm just curious, but could you forwarded actually a copy of the remote learning kind of survey and report that you had done as part of data collection. Just, you know, one thing that you could share with school committee that seemed to be in agreement was very positive about the remote learning, and one thing that seemed to be more of a universal struggle?
Universal struggle was, I think, especially when we added on the workload of both content subjects and the specialists and all the different sites and passwords, really overwhelmed families. And we're developing a central learning platform to host all those sites and to help with navigation. And I think one thing that would really work was when teachers, again, that's would be very flexible and they have with their schedules, but those who are able to create the small group instruction, I think a lot of students, when they're in front of 22, 24 kids, how much they enjoyed both the synchronous small group or the asynchronous where they're recorded, the kids could go back and review the work, especially if you're not an audio learner like myself. It was really helpful for them to go back. So I think that very innovative.
That's great. Wonderful. All right, and Principal Soto.
Good evening, and thank you for having me. So at the Argenciano School, things have been a little bit different. As you know, we have a very diverse community at the Argenciano School with a very high population of English language learners. So during this extended closure, our needs have been beyond just instruction and learning. There has been a lot of concern about food, housing security, access inequalities, and also, of course, because of COVID, health and safety. So during the first few weeks when I met with my staff, initially, I told my staff there was no training in teacher training for this, and there was no training in administration for Pandemic 101. So we were figuring things out as we were going, but I think every single member of our community, teachers, paraprofessionals, secretary, AP, everyone took a role to make sure that all our students in our community were doing okay, our families were doing well, and they had what they needed. So the staff immediately took action. The first week of the extended closure, we spent it on checking on people's well-being, and then we moved forward to seeing what the families needed. And we established a routine of weekly meetings with the staff. So between Mondays and Thursdays, I meet with all my grade levels. And I found that to be an essential part of my week because it was the way that I identified the needs of our students and we planned for action. So the staff were getting the information from the families, and then through the grade level meetings and the SST meetings at the end of the week, we connected families with whatever they needed. And that proved to be essential for me as well, for my own personal mental well-being. I'm a people's person, and being at home in front of a computer doesn't work for me well. So seeing the staff and seeing how they were doing and, you know, talking things out and just hanging in there together was helpful for us as a community. During the first few weeks of the closure, our staff identified certain needs for our students. First, the priority was food, and we were really grateful that Somerville Public Schools right away put together a plan for food distribution, because by that weekend, teachers were really concerned that the kids who depend on the breakfast and the lunch from the schools. We're not going to have meals. So we were really grateful. We worked with putting together the volunteers for the East Somerville distribution site, which I'm part of that group also. Then the question was, our English language learners, our SEI1 students, the newcomers, do not have access to materials, and they do not have access to a device, and they don't have access to the internet. Our SEI1 team of teachers put together the idea of putting backpacks with school supplies for our kiddos. And we put in the backpacks notebooks, pencils, sharpeners, crayons, scissors, construction paper, everything the teachers thought they needed, including a packet of learning resources for the time that we were going to take to make sure that we were connecting them to the internet. So we had a team of 5 to 6 teachers, including myself and one of my daughters, who's actually a senior, put together 137 backpacks of supplies. And then the team of teachers took the role of delivering the backpacks door to door. And in that work, we discovered how many of our families had been moving from one place to another within Somerville because of things that were happening with the landlords and the rent and all that. So then the access, we worked with at the East Somerville to provide Chromebook access to the students. So the Chromebook distribution happened. We have around 153 students utilizing the Chromebooks from Somerville Public Schools. We were able to provide 40 tablets to our students in grades pre-K to 2nd grade. And we also had another team that worked on connecting families to the Comcast promo codes that Somerville is sponsoring for their families. And that took times from 15-minute phone calls to Comcast to sometimes a 2-hour phone call on a 3-way call with the families to make sure the family had the Comcast service. Once we kind of like got that laid down, we communicated the expectations. So I learned from Mark last year that he utilized a Sunday email to parents, and I had implemented that at the Argenciano School at the very beginning of the year. So that was my way to continue communicating with families about things that were happening during the closure. And through that email, we explained to the families, these are the expectations from now on. You're going to start seeing a weekly schedule with activities that are required for students to complete. So that went from 3 activities in the lower grades to 5 activities in the upper grades, and then the Google meetings and participation. And the emails on Sunday go out. I write the emails on Sunday, and the emails go out to our families in the 4 targeted languages, so that all families are included in the information that we're providing. I was inspired, on top of that, I was inspired by the virtual field day that our physical education teachers put together last week. And with Chris Savage, my PE teacher, she showed me how to do that. And I put together a virtual principal's office that is now sitting on the remote learning website that we put together for Argenciano School. And it was a very fun way to share with students kind of the normal routines that we do on every day at the school: birthday announcements, shout outs, resources for parents, and including read alouds for students, some of them from YouTube, but including a read aloud from me because of the parents were like, oh, the kids want to see you. So I put that together, and I used it last week, and I'm going to use it this coming week. And then if we go into remote learning next year, that will be the way that I will utilize to continue doing the morning announcements and the weekly announcements for students. So during all this time, we have followed the engagement of students. We've been tracking it by kid, grade by grade. And we have found that we have an average in the last 4 weeks of 60 to 66% of our students are fully engaged with everything that the teachers are providing. And then we have around 24 to 28% of our students that are partially engaged, and that could be in different ways. It could be that they did all the activities but didn't join the Google meetings, or they joined the Google meetings but didn't complete the activities. By tracking student engagement, we saw that we had 37 students that had not at all been engaged with any of the activities provided or the meetings that the teachers were also giving access to. Not that we don't know where they are. We know the whereabouts of all of our students. We know that they're okay, and we know the situations that are happening at home. It's just that for the different factors that the family is going through, they are unable to connect, do the work, and participate. And that goes from illness to, I have students that we provided a Chromebook that have internet access, but they're just not engaging. I have families that are not able to navigate the platforms that the teachers are using, and they don't have the education or the tech savvy they're not tech savvy to be able to help the kids get through the work. So the special ed teachers and the ESL teachers have been crucial in this work because they have been doing small group instruction with many of those students that are not able to connect or engage. But still we have those 37 students not participating in the bulk of the activities that the teachers are providing. And then amazingly, in this virtual world platform, we have been able to stay connected to students that have moved to other cities for whatever reasons. So they report to us, I'm moving to Everett, to Malden, but I'm coming back to Somerville when this is over. So with the guidance of the Parent Information Center, the Enrollment Center, and we decided that it was best for the children to stay connected because it was going to be very probable that they were not going to be able to connect in the city that they were. So we have a bulk of students that are connected to us in that way. And we have a student who had to return to Argentina, and she's still connected to us from Argentina, and she's fully engaged with the second grade activities. We have a student who got stuck in Italy, and we were able to re-enroll her virtually, and she's been fully engaged with all the fourth grade activities that the teacher has been providing. And we have two students who moved to Pennsylvania. One of them is an 8th grader, and they are still connected to the activities that the teachers are doing. And the goal is that they finish the school year in Somerville Public Schools, and we're able to provide evidence of that. So a little bit of what I said before. Go ahead, Mary. You want to?
You know your students.
Huh?
Really know your students.
Great job, Glenda. You're making me look bad. I thought we had 5 minutes for a statement and questions. I feel like I know your whole school. I can start naming them up.
I'm not done yet. Do I still have time?
So I want to open it up because I'm sure school committees get some questions, but I do just want to say to school committee, this passion about knowing each of our kids and making sure that despite the pandemic, we're able to know where and what the circumstance is for the student has been really critical in the engagement trackers. Because what it allows us to do is to continue that into the summer so that if the student wasn't able to, for the variety of reasons, engage while we were in session, we can pick up with that student during the summer and have a better sense of what we need to do for the fall. And that's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of hard work on the educator's part, on the counselor's part, on the administrations in the school's part to go that deep into each student and each family. And it's a real effort with SFLC and the Enrollment Center to make sure each student and family unit is really cared for. And I think that's what you're hearing, you know, in Glenda and Mark's, you know, conversations about what is working. It is not working for all families, and we know that. We know that for our ELL families in particular, we saw right away that there was a source of disconnection. There was a source of, you know, some of this were barriers that existed outside of school that we've been trying to work through. But, you know, as soon as we can physically be together, that is the mode we're used to. That is the way that we care for students. That is the way that we interact with students. And we're eager to get there. But in the meantime, we're trying to do the best we can to make sure we stay in contact with each of the families in a deep level, and that educators like Mark shared, you know, in their ways are able to share their expertise and their care for children through the curriculum, through that engagement in the classroom, in whatever the modality is that they can. So incredibly proud of, you know, both of you guys, and also the other principals that have shared. I would like school committee to, I know there's a couple of questions that have popped up. I think it'd be great if we could get to them, Chair Norman.
Mr. Green and then Dr. Ackman.
Sure, thanks. I was actually going to say this for items from board members, but since it came up in Ms. Soto's report, I'm going to go ahead and ask about it. I know that come the end of the school year, our plan is to change the delivery of food in our buildings. And I just wanted to know if that was budget related. Are we going to be giving people more food to make up for the fact that they're only being there 3 days a week? what is the plan going forward? Because as Ms. Soto pointed out, this has been very, very useful and helpful for families, and so I don't know how we're going to manage that over the summer.
Yeah. So we're actually working on that plan. I mean, part of this is also as part of the surveys, identifying from families what they believe they will need during the summer. And then we'll figure out which locations it makes sense to dispense from. So we don't see it as stopping. What we may need to do is adjust which sites, how much, and we're moving now to a 3-day a week, and that's just based on data that's showing most people are picking up multiples on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So that allows us to stagger staff as well, and it gives Lauren's staff a chance to be able to prepare more food in the off days instead of having to run a crew every day to be able to prepare. So we will be working closely as well as with REC, because they're going to be running some programs, and we are the food provider for REC as well, for any of the camps that they do. But we will be playing a deep role and continue to play a deep role relative to the food. Same with diapers and some of the other kinds of supplies. Glenda, go for it.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, in terms of the food distribution, what we found through this work is that many of our immigrant families are afraid to leave their home. They had this misunderstanding that whatever they have access to is going to impact them negatively. So right now we're working with around 93 families that were not utilizing the resources in the city, and we're connecting to our staff members to get other resources. So we have kind of like streamlined that, but during the week, I've been working with the Dark Horse. We have a parent who works for the Dark Horse, and our PTA was able to get our parents to donate $5,000 to the Dark Horse, and they've been providing for weekly groceries for 30 of the Argenciano families. So I see many families on Fridays at the food distribution sites, but there are many that don't feel comfortable coming out.
Thank you. Dr. Ackman, and then Ms. Batone, and then Ms. Phillips.
Thank you for taking the time to speak with us tonight, given all that you are dealing with. I have a question for whoever's going to answer, but I think it can be addressed by Principal Soto. Earlier tonight, we heard in public comment from the co-chair of CPAC on behalf of CPAC and the LPAC that the highest needs families don't believe that gaps are being closed with the education that's being offered currently. And this is just ideas, but we're the policymakers who will hopefully be able to support your ideas. Do you have thoughts on, besides meeting those basic needs, like food is obviously the basics of what we need to do, but other steps we can be taking, especially with second language families or non-native English speaking families, to support them, especially given that we don't know what fall is going to look like, but there is a decent likelihood that there's going to be a remote component. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mary, do you want to answer? Do you want me to answer?
So, you can answer from the school side. I will say on the district side that SFLC is in the process of planning parent classes to be able to help the parents work through kind of how confusing the technology can be. And I do, and it's targeted specifically for our English language learner parents, although it'll be open to others. But I think that will be very helpful. I also think how we've structured summer school is very much focused on our level 1 and 2 ELL learners, which would be our beginners and early learners. And that's going to be in a very deliberate kind of one-on-one or small group where we can really kind of hone in and work on the individual learning language development skills. I think on the special education side, Christine and her staff are working relative to IEP to figure out what are the services that could continue and be delivered and use that summer to be able to, again, reduce the amount of gap. I think we have to all acknowledge that going from fully in person to remote, there's no way to not have some gap form. Anyone that's saying that's not the case, I'd really like to see that. So we have to acknowledge that. And that means that over the summer, we have to work with students that sometimes wouldn't typically work with us over the summer and direct our resources in that way. And then come fall, part of the transition piece has to also be about assessment, to be able to figure out what skills we have slipped on, what skills the students have slipped on that we need to figure out how to accelerate. And it may also be that as part of our plan, the students that are the hardest to reach relative to having to be physically present, that they are prioritized in a return plan. And that they may return first and they may return more. So these are going to all be part of our thinking as we get state guidance mid-June and then continue on into our planning for the fall.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ackman. Ms. Patone and then Ms. Phillips.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I think I have more of a comment, and I will try to be brief. First of all, I want to applaud both of you, Mr. Hurry and Ms. Soto, for the level of communication with parents, your use of data, the personal connections. It is so reassuring. It's very easy as both a parent and a school committee member to feel worried and negative about our future. The fact that the work that you're doing right now really stems those feelings for me, and I really wanted to compliment you and thank you for taking your time tonight, but also all the work that you and your staff are doing. It's incredibly impressive. And I also want to comment briefly on what the superintendent said. And it was going to be my question, which is, are we going to prioritize different students when we're doing our plan next year? The pain I'm really feeling is about the kids that are falling through the cracks in a different way in this virtual environment. Particularly, you know, you've talked about the language learners, you've talked about our special ed students, but also our kids that are going to be transitioning. So transitioning into kindergarten, transitioning into first grade, transitioning into a middle grades environment, and transitioning to the high school. I think those are some of the populations that are most at risk to fall off the radar. So anyway, I just wanted to applaud you, and I know how complicated it will be to do this kind of prioritization, and I want to reflect that the district and the schools know the kids, and that is what I'm hearing right now, and I hope that's what the community is hearing, is that you know who the kids are and who are most at risk, and that I'm feeling positive that that prioritization is being considered as we move.
Yeah, one thing.
It's difficult. It will be challenged.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
One thing about both of these principals is they are data geeks behind the scenes. They love data of students to be able to identify what support students need. You know, Mark early on took on the whole chronic attendance and literally made phone calls himself and calculated down to the hours that students were missing by not being in school. And it completely allowed him to turn around what was already a very small chronic attendance issue to really almost nullify it. Glenda, the minute test results come out, Glenda is on the phone. I mean, she is on the phone, down to the individual kid. Oh my gosh, this. Oh my gosh, that. I mean, and you know, to her point on the engagement tracker, you know, literally the message right from the start with our principals was what? Every student. Every student. And that's what they have done. They've used the engagement tracker faithfully, and because of that, we will have very good data on which students we need to prioritize in the return.
I'm just going to close on, oh, I'm sorry, Carrie, I apologize.
No, go ahead.
I just was going to close on that, you know, if there's challenges in the community about this prioritization kind of effort, I'm 100% behind it. And I think that it is incredibly innovative, and it is 100% focused on our concerns about equity. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hurry, I don't think I've ever heard, did I get it right, that you use data as your comfort food? Is that what you said? Okay.
Yeah, I didn't want to correct Mary because she's right, but we actually, when you do the attendance, it's down to the minute. But
That's right.
How many minutes in the school day, every hour, how many days? It makes a big difference when you do the compounding interest. But yes, it is my comfort.
I love that expression. I will use it again because, like you and Glenda, that matters. Ms. Phillips, you wanted to say something or ask a question?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I just want to thank you both for your Herculean effort and the effort of your staff at this time to keep your communities close, to make sure everyone's basic needs are met, and to teach. You guys are working so incredibly hard. I also, as a parent, want to give a special shout out to Ms. Soto's third grade team. We talk a lot and we hear a lot about how virtual learning has shown us that we can do one-on-one instruction really well in a virtual environment. We can do small group instruction really well in a virtual environment. But Glenda's third grade team is showing us that we can also do project-based learning in a virtual environment. And I hope that that is something, if we have to do any portion of next year remotely, that they'll be able to teach all of us around the district just to take that to the next level. So please send my thanks to your team.
Thank you.
Well, I just wanted to jump in, which is, Glenda, you said there was no manual, right? There was no manual and there was no time. We went out on a Wednesday and Monday we were serving food, and it boggles the mind. And I think these are trying times for everybody on many, many different levels. And when I hear tracking every student and knowing, because I think we can all get in our little, the 3 or 4 people we see every day, and you lose sense of what the community is and what's going on. It's huge, and it is. Mark, you do it too in your community. It's inspirational, and I don't mean that in like a fake Hallmark kind of way. I mean the fact that you know where these students are, and you were prepared to tell us more, Glenda, because you know them all, and I love that. I do love that, and so it is. I'm always so impressed with Somerville educators at every level and every capacity, because it's head and heart. It's always head and heart. And Glenda, you have a daughter graduating this week?
Yes. Yeah. Tomorrow's Wednesday, right? Yeah. No, Wednesday. She's up for graduation Wednesday. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Somerville High School. Yeah. She's graduating Wednesday.
Congratulations. So
Thank
not
you.
only are you a proud principal, you are a proud parent. And
very thankful that graduation will happen.
Great. Well, I'll get to see you from afar, and we'll wave and virtually hug. Any other closing remarks? Because I know this is a very long day for you two, and I want to thank you both for joining us.
I just want to say that, when Glenda said there's no playbook, for the pandemic, I mean, I think, I think the situation that happened with the killing of George Floyd, and a lot of the emotions that the community is feeling, the students, the staff, as leaders, we're very used to being together in a way to allow each other to grieve when something happens like this, and to process. And I think, one of the things we've talked about in our leadership sessions, it's really tough to do that virtually. It's really tough. And as leaders, you have to develop a different menu of how to offer that kind of safe space. And even when you do it, not everybody feels safe in that space. So I think this has been a year on so many levels that for our leaders and our educators, it's been exceptionally challenging. And so it's an extra applause for their true adaptability in it, and resilience of, no matter what is happening, being committed to their communities, to their families, to their students, and to the educators to try to do whatever they need, often at their own expense. So just huge pride to both of you guys and to all the principals.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's great to see both of you. We'll see you later this week, Glenda.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. A big shout out to our hardworking staff. So thank you.
Absolutely. I second that.
Thanks, guys.
Superintendent Skipper, more to your report tonight?
Yes, there is. So I would like, we also have Dr. Jessica Boston Davis, who, if she could turn her webcam, and our illustrious Assistant Superintendent, Chad Maza. You know, several school committee members asked if we could update and share publicly even more so what we're doing right now relative to our equity planning. And I think specifically given the events with the killing of George Floyd, what has sort of happened in the district and what we're working toward in terms of support for our staff, for our families, for our community. And so, you know, Jessica and the district instructional leadership team have been meeting with Chad to talk through the different layers of how we might offer supports to our staff of color, to our students and families of color, and to all educators relative to how they can be a support during this time. Can't say enough about Jess's work. She is so thoughtful, listens. She's a really great listener. And so I think people feel really okay with sharing and talking so that we can try to be as proactive and solution-minded as possible in the district. But it has been a really emotional and upsetting time for our educators of color in particular and our students and families of color. So I asked both Jess and Chad to spend a few minutes tonight just being able to share with school committee what we have been doing this year, acknowledging this is the tip of the iceberg. This is just start. I mean, I think as I expressed to you in our district, most of this work had not been done before. And so really 3 years ago was when we sort of started really having more focused attention around anti-bias work, cultural proficiency work, identity work. And you know, I think for us with our district, you know, what was said earlier, I think Mr. Green said this, was needing to not just be satisfied with saying I'm not racist or the district isn't racist, and instead really being much more proactive in a stance of saying we're anti-racist. And what does that mean, and what is my role in that as an educator? So I think that is the work that will come, and this is work that you know, we have to move beyond the reactivity that we get into when there's a particular issue and everyone comes around the issue and there's a lot of attention, and then people just move on. And we can't do that because our kids don't move on. Our Black and brown students don't move on. They're in our schools. They're in our classrooms. So we have to get to the point where this is the front and center issue in our district 24/7. So that is some of the work that Jess and Chad are going to share, and then there'll be certainly more updates as we get through the summer and into the fall. So with that, Jess and Chad, I don't know who's sharing their screen out.
I have the screen share. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. Before we begin, just a couple of quick things. You know, this is an opportunity for us, you know, as a district to really come together. And by saying come together, I don't mean having our staff of color lead this charge while our white staff sits back and says, okay, we're along for the ride. I think this is an opportunity for us to be collaborative and to really let everyone know that we want to see a change and that we are committed to this work. But we also know that, you know, we have to do better. We have to do better in a lot of areas, and the work that we have, you know, done this year, and you'll see some of it in this presentation, is just a beginning. We have a lot of work to do, you know, as a district to change things. It's going to be hard work. It's going to be uncomfortable for people, but that's just the way it has to be. And it's an opportunity for us as a district to lead by example and to actually walk the walk. So with that said, we will begin our presentation.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Good to be here. So
just to start off with some of the focus areas, just some of them. We did a lot during this school year. I'm already saying last year. We've done a lot, but just to kind of overview some of the main focus areas for our work. The first being in the area of professional development. So through PD, and we did this, professional development with principals, with the all administrators team, school-based, so really every kind of corner of the organization. But our focus there with professional development was around building a common knowledge around language. So when we say equity, what do we mean? How does that relate to the district's equity policy? In other words, and understanding oppression. What are we saying when we say structural oppression, structural racism? How is that different than interpersonal? So that was the main focus around there. We also talked about unconscious bias, deficit-based thinking, and amplifying and learning from voices in our community. So we had, I was listening during the public comment section section of the meeting, and actually during one of our principal meetings, we invited LPAC to come, and LPAC came and led the meeting, and they talked about some of their unique kind of concerns and areas that they're hoping for the school district to grow. So that was our one focus area in professional development. Another was around targeted data-driven planning. So this year, all administrators, every department in school was tasked with creating an equity action plan. So everybody is in a different place. So some folks were planning from scratch, some folks were planning on implementation, but everyone was planning. We're using data to identify areas, so looking at disproportionality, looking at predictability, and kind of every inch of data that you can, and picking an area that you wanted to target and focus. And we developed those in groups in our all administrator meetings, and we had targeted feedback and planning time. So every admin meeting, there was at least 30 minutes of planning time with groups, and we were able to give specific feedback, not only myself and the other folks on the district instructional leadership team, but also working with New York City Leadership Academy. The consultants were also able to give specific feedback. And finally, specific school-based support. So I mentioned a minute ago around specific professional development, but really responding to the needs of each school as things arise, as they always do. And so we also thought about classroom diversification of texts, and not only classroom, but also say guided reading libraries, diversifying our text and different school-based PDs based on the needs.
So one of the things that we started off every all admin team meeting with was norms for every meeting, because we felt they were extremely important. And the reason why we have these here is because we wanted to point out a couple of things to you. When Jess and I were talking as we were creating this today, we thought it would be good for you to see what the norms that we focused on were. But specifically, there are a few norms. Then the next slide is agreements. We wanted to show you that these were already included in the work that we are doing. Even though we have a lot more work to do, these weren't put in after the fact. These were a core part of every meeting and what we lived by during those meetings and when we left those meetings. So for example, if you look at number 3, experience discomfort as part of the process of healing and transformation. And that's a hard one for people because, a lot of the things that we spoke about this year and planned around were uncomfortable, and it made people, feel discomfort. But in order to make effective and real change, there has to be a level of discomfort, and there will be more discomfort coming because we need to make sure we continue on the path that we're going down. And if you look at number 8, privilege and position do not allow a free card. Norms apply to all. So it doesn't matter who you are. These norms apply to everybody. It's not just one group, it's everybody that participates. And that's around 75 people that we have in these meetings. And then when you look at these agreements, if you look at number 7 specifically, know that racially biased systems and processes exist and commit to seeking out and interrupting them. That is so important for the work that we are doing, that we have started, but will continue to do. 1, we have to acknowledge that they exist. 2, we have to reflect on them. And we also have to take time and reflect ourselves to see where we stand. Because in order to move forward, we have to all be on the same page in the same place. But these are a core part of the agreements and the norms that we had for every single meeting throughout the year.
So here's an example of the equity planning template that every district administrator received, just in case you were curious. I want to just emphasize that this is a template and that this was just the starting block. So folks took this and ran. Okay, so some people completely transformed, but these were the guiding questions that we used, and it was kind of lived in, and everyone had a kind of shared document so that the district instructional leadership team, myself, we can go in and kind of look at what's going on. People updated as they went. You know, people added to their folder and maybe completely shifted their plans, but this was the kind of framing that was used with the administrators. And again, this is going over what we've done so far this year. We continued with our partnerships that we've had. So New York City Leadership Academy has been a great partner. They coach all over the country, leading for equity and coaching leaders. And so it's really a privilege to be able to work with them so closely. And so they've co-facilitated several meetings with myself, and they've also led some individual PDs with different groups of staff members in our district. We also continued our partnership with Facing History and Ourselves and offered weekend professional developments with Facing History. So these were educators that wanted to take a weekend long kind of long course, if you will. And the same with Teaching Tolerance. And we're hoping that there's an opportunity to partner with Teaching Tolerance in the future, in the near future, virtually.
So before I get into this slide, one of the other things that we were doing this year is for the principal meetings, we had 2 per month. The first meeting was centered around equity training for principals. And at each of those equity trainings, they brought one of their ILT members to take part in that training as well. Because our goal was to have principals and ILT members take what they learned back to their groups. So that way you could start to make systemic change. It's not just for administrators. The real change happens with the leadership teams of the schools and the educators who are in the classrooms, the paraprofessionals, food service workers. So we wanted to make sure that we change what that process looked like. So as far as our current work, you know, in response to the killing of George Floyd and the international response, our leadership development meeting, which we had last week with our all admin team, you know, we gave space for individual processing and we framed the question around how are we connecting intellectually, emotionally, ethically, and professionally. It's very important to let everyone process in a way that is conducive to, you know, their learning style, their emotions, because everyone has a different set of emotions and will process, you know, this incident in a different way. And we need to make sure that we give people the time and the space for those conversations. And then we also had collaborative work time for planning a response for the immediate, short-term, and long-term, because those 3 go hand in hand. You start with the immediate, then you move to short-term. What happens to sustain that down the road? So we know that those are very important pieces of what we need to do. But if you look over to the right, how is this impacting our students, families, and staff? How is this impacting all 3 groups? And how will we support students, families, and staff during this time? You know, thinking through the lens of immediate, short-term, and long-term, because those are the crucial groups that we need to support during these times. And then we also, there are a bunch of resource guides that we had sent out. Jess had virtual office hours for people to connect with her. And then, you know, based on what was happening, most, if not all, groups started to revise their equity plans.
because they realized that what they had, while effective, didn't fit all pieces of a response that it needed to.
Great, so continuing our work, so thinking right now and in the future. So we're going to continue to support with the development and the implementation of equity plans. So this is not going to be a 1 year and done thing. As Chad just mentioned, right now folks are actually revising based on everything that's happening and thinking about the needs of their communities and revising their plans. But that's going to be a continued effort, and it will continue throughout next year. The next point is equity and anti-bias focused PD over the summer. So the summer's focus on PD, whereas in years past, especially because it's different because we were, not all staying at home, teachers can kind of submit proposals for anything really, and teachers and administrators for what they felt like would be a good need for development in the district. And this year it's different in that it is focused on priority areas. And so one of the 4 buckets that PD will be focused on is around equity, is around anti-bias work for teachers and leaders and all staff members in the district. And finally, we have a new initiative called the Advancing Equity Task Force. So this is just for the summer, and this is developed thanks to the DESE Teacher Diversification Grant. So we're able to stipend staff members. I just put a little blurb here so you can see what the Advancing Equity Task Force. This is straight from the job description. So it's saying that the focus is on improving the learning environments of all students. So it's really student-centered, thinking about removing barriers of current inequities and also highlighting barriers, highlighting and advancing best practices in policy. So the Equity Task Force is staff members. So there are staff in every type of roles from all across the district. We have folks from the CAP all the way up to scale that are part of this group. And the range of experience is from 2 years to 35 years in education. And there are 18 members, 8 of whom identify as people of color. So just under half people of color. And that was really important to me to make sure that this is a representative group with diverse experiences and diverse perspectives. So hopefully we get to do some really great work that we can build off of when we start next school year. And thinking about building that work, something really new that's exciting that Mary and I just talked about, Superintendent Skipper and I just talked about, is this idea of an equity ambassador. I use quotes because the name may change, but this equity ambassador job description is being developed right now, and it's to stipend a specialist, like an equity specialist, if you will, in the role for each school to advance equity plans next year. So that person will work closely with me and work closely with their school principal and their school's ILT, their school's instructional leadership team, to really make sure that the equity plan is able to be advanced in the ways that it is designed to. But principals, everyone has a lot on their plate, so it's good to have somebody really with a laser focus on that. And then it also helps to think about my messaging and making sure that, one, I'm getting a pulse what's happening in all schools, but also all schools understand what's happening in the central office. So it really allows for a lot of communication and a very clear message. We also have student-centered initiatives, thinking again about the future. So really excited about the potential partnerships with Build and the BAM program, who do awesome work for students, especially students of color, especially BAM is focused specifically with our male students. And so thinking really about students who can sometimes need some extra support, especially as they approach their high school and maybe post K-12 years. And so these supports are there to center them in their experiences and make sure that they are on the path to where they need to go. One other thing that I forgot to mention in the slides, and that I'm just remembering now, is also thinking about our immediate response. Teen empowerment, which has always been a great partner of ours. This is more for the immediate response, but in the response of the killing of George Floyd and others, and the international kind of response to that, we will also be hosting town halls for students in middle school and high school to process with teen empowerment's support and facilitating. And the goal there is really about giving students a space to process and some tools for healing. So thinking about how might you breathe when you're feeling anxious, maybe thinking about some yoga moves. Also, where can you channel some of this energy that we all feel right now, but especially in your middle school and high school years, not really knowing how to channel energy. So connecting with leaders who work for teen empowerment, but also help support a lot of initiatives happening right now in response to the killing of George Floyd, and connecting them and you know, just giving students those tools and those resources to help process in this incredibly challenging time. So that was as I was speaking, I realized I forgot to include that. But that concludes our overview, and thank you for your time. We're happy to receive any questions.
Still getting the hang of this. So we have, I think it goes Mr. Green, Dr. Ackman, and then Ms. Krepchen. Mr. Green?
So I have 3 questions. 2 of them are process and one of them is content. I just want to know how you want me to ask all 3? Do you want to rotate through us? How do you want to do it, Madam Chair?
Are they different aspects of the same question?
The 2 process ones are, the substance one is not.
Why don't we start with the 2 process ones, take other questions, and then put you back in the queue? Does that sound reasonable?
Sounds fine to me.
Okay.
So the process questions are, 1, will this presentation be made available to us? Because I think, sharing this with communities we serve, et cetera, could be really useful and very powerful. So I'd love to see if we can get that shared. And while we're talking about things that can be shared, would it be possible for a school committee to see some of these equity plans that have been developed by schools, just so we have a greater depth of knowledge beyond just a template?
Yeah, we certainly can. I mean, I think that's a great idea. And I think, a lot of work has gone into them. And I will say, that all groups, have realized that they need to have more within their plans because what they had, while effective, just wasn't enough. But we can certainly do that. Certainly. Yeah.
Thank you.
And Mr. Green, did you have a second process question? Or no, those are the 2 of them. Gotcha. And I agree with Mr. Green, putting it out to the community. I know that all of us have gotten a lot of questions, certainly in the last week or 2. Dr. Ackman?
Hi. Thank you both. This was really wonderful. I want to give snaps to the amazing work that you do, and I'm so thankful for it. And one of the things that made me really proud and that I wanted to say was, and tell me whether I get this wrong, but that we by design made sure that at least half of the participants were people of color. Was that for, I forget which of the pieces of it. So one of the things that I wanted to say that is my commitment, and I hope my colleagues will support me in this, is as a well-intentioned liberal white lady, I know that, we, in an attempt to help, can speak and not elevate. And I hope throughout this work, we continue to elevate the voices of people of color and really listen to their needs and do our best to respond to them. So to you, Dr. Davis, Assistant Superintendent Mazza and Superintendent Skipper, like, I vow to provide you as much political cover as we can if people are upset that we're doing that work to elevate those voices. And I know that you do that, but please continue. And if you get pushback, I'll commit to doing what I can to make sure that that work is supported. So again, thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Dr. Ackman, Ms. Krepchen, and then we'll go back to Mr. Green.
Thank you for that great presentation. I was just thinking about how you've covered a lot with staff and of course the students, which is the bulk of what the school does. But I've also just been thinking about parents. And I know that I first met Jessica and got really involved 2 years ago when I hosted a Let's Talk About Race for parents at the Argentiano. And I found it super helpful. And I think other parents did as well. So I just wanted to throw out the idea, it's not even really a question, just throwing out the suggestion of thinking about parents in this piece and how can we engage them and et cetera.
Thank you for that input, Ms. Krepchen. Hello, Sam. It's good to see you. Mr. Green and then Ms. Patone.
So my content question, maybe stealing some thunder from tomorrow, but I know that especially like Becoming a Man initiative went back and forth in our budget as revenues rose and fall through this process. But is their presence in this slideshow evidence that we hope to still work with them next year?
Good question. Ms. Superintendent Skipper, please.
So not stealing thunder, those that sit on school committee meetings get to hear a little bit of good stuff. I think what we're planning to do with Build is going to go forward at full circle. There was planning done halfway through this year for that to happen, and I feel pretty confident Full Circle Next Wave is going to stay at the Edgerly. They'll be stable. I think the issue with Somerville High is we are, as you know, with the construction, we're not going to be able to move back up there fully until near halfway through. Space is still all over the place. And the real way BAM works is to actually be able to be fully in the community and to have the advisor who's also got a clinical background working directly with the kids. And I think next year that's going to be hard to do. But what I want to do is we've built money in to consult with BAM for next year so that we can begin to forge that relationship. So that when we hit it the following year full and have that full-time person there, we've already kind of have the system in place. So that you will see a placeholder in the budget for consulting dollars for BAM, and we will bring them in first for that. Build will start at Full Circle full, and then the following year, Build will expand to the high school. BAM will start at the high school the following year, and then the plan had been the Healy. So we're just a little bit off right now in terms of being able to bring BAM in particular in full, because we're still going to have a bit of a fractured campus with the high school, but we want to begin the work with them. So that's what the consulting piece will allow us to do. So they'll, Sean Brown will, have somebody that will work with Jessica, and we'll start to do the development work, which is another piece of this, in order to be able to sustain the program fully for the following year.
Superintendent Skipper, can you give a quick description of what Build and BAM is so that we all know what we're talking about?
Sure. So BAM, Becoming a Man, Sean Brown is the founder. It's a national organization. Lisa Cook had connection to it, our scale director, and I was familiar with Sean from Boston. They've been critical partners in Boston for years. The idea of it is really creating a group, and it's targeted really for young men of color to come together to meet. They do sort of a morning meeting. And they have core principles in which they're working with our boys of color to talk about what to do with anger in a constructive way, emotion, when things happen that they experience in the school or societally, how can they process it. It really establishes a safe space for the students to be able to do that with each other. The person that is the director of the site has a clinical or social worker background so that they're able to really help the young men process. But then create action plans, right? So it's all about how do you create an action plan for your life so you're empowered to be able to do the things you want to do. So, loving the model of it and knowing that, particularly at Somerville High School, where we see some of our young men of color really kind of fall off, this will give us an opportunity starting freshman year to really engage and give them a support that doesn't currently exist, in the hope that that support for those 4 years will help them to be able to seize every opportunity possible, and to also provide important feedback as to what are the kinds of systemic issues that we will see, that we see at Somerville High School that we'll need to continue to work on. In the case of Build, this is really, again, a model that is national, but also I was familiar with from Boston. And so Build is really about how do you connect young people of color with the opportunity to be able to gain kind of career skill, life skill at different points in project-based. So for instance, they started working with a teacher. So it's usually it can be a career tech teacher, or it can be a teacher that's a counselor at the school, a guidance counselor that works and becomes sort of the lead instructor. There's a curriculum that is with it. And then Build provides internships for young people to be able to connect in the community and gain kind of that practical applied skill, resume building, and then very tangible, also concrete skills in several areas, construction, tech. There's several different areas that, depending on what the student is interested in, they can do their project development around. Again, small cohort, they work in a class, so usually the class size would be like 20 to kids or so, and they would offer a formal class that you get credit for and has a curriculum to it. So they're both just powerful programs that, and there's more types of programs that we're looking at. A 13th year program that, will be able to help bridge for our students, particularly our students of color, that we would see when they graduate and all of the supports from Somerville High and Full Circle fall away. Like any young people, they'll struggle. And so how do we help them in an important transition to the next step? So these are the kinds of programs that, again, research-based, data behind them, tried and true, and they have founders who are just so intimately involved in the community that they really have a lot of respect, these programs. And so we feel fortunate that they're willing to come to Somerville and be part of us.
Fantastic. We have Ms. Batone, Ms. Krepchen, and then Ms. Barish.
Hello. I wanted to thank you for this timely update. I know this work has been going on over the last year, and obviously there were things that you're working on for the last couple of weeks, and we appreciate you taking the time and collecting all the information.
Can I just interrupt you, Chad? Can you shut your computer off? It's still projecting. Thank you. Go ahead, Laura.
Thank you for that too. Two things that have come up in the past and currently, which is one, with respect to professional development. Hello, young man. Chad, your PC is still up. You might want to unshare it.
Yeah.
Although your child is lovely.
There we go. Is that better?
Yes, much better.
The first question is about what is sort of our participation rate in PD? I know certain PD is optional. How much are we penetrating across our staff? And the second question is related, which was around consistent procedures in response to situations where of bias or racism, and how different schools are handling things differently. And it's not a new thing that I'm hearing from parents, that they're concerned that the level of knowledge and experience in the staff is different. And so some things that one staff member might consider something that they have to take action on, another staff member might just say, oh, this is kids being kids. So again, about participation rate or penetration in PD, as well as progress on some kind of consistent expectations in terms of responses to situations. Thank you.
So on the PD number, we would have to pull that data. I can say that we've had a tremendous response, that anytime we offer PD, that it has anything to do with identity, anti-bias, from any of our partners, go right away. I think to Jess's point, when we offered stuff through Facing History that was over the weekend, which is obviously a different level of commitment that not everyone can make, they still fill. So, I mean, I think we have penetrated, but I think the issue here, you can't PD your way out of some of this stuff. This, you know, this is about changing minds and spirits and behaviors. And so you can offer PD and people can check the box and say, I took it. But that's not going to get us a district that's anti-racist. To get that, you have to work closely with the staffs and the teams, and they have to have plans that they commit to, and they understand what their role in that is. And that's the deep work Jess is doing right now with the equity planning. It's the deep work that has to have our ILT, our district ILT, intimately involved in, because it overlaps in so many areas. It overlaps in the curriculum, you know, the books that kids are reading or exposed to, the way curriculum presents history or particular issues, the kinds of conversations that happen in class, the way that advanced coursework is gotten to, and who has access to that and in what ways. So it really threads. It's like a spider. It threads throughout the system. So PD is a good start, but it will not be the measure by which we affect change. That measure has to be measured in the outcomes of our Black and brown students and in their experiences and their testimony of those experiences. That's how we're going to know we're making progress as a district. So we'll get you the numbers so you'll have a sense of how many people are signing up and so forth. But really, you know, this is much deeper than that. And I think you'll see in the equity plans that this is about challenging structures, challenging power structures, challenging tradition. You know, traditions often can mask lots of biases. So this is the hard work. This is the work that we have to take on and do. But happy to get the numbers to you guys and help to make some sense of what that means relative to the district. But it's got to go. It's got to go way beyond that. Jess,
I was also going to say there were several schools that principals chose to use their school-based PD time, which means it was the entire school staff. So that wasn't the entire district, but there were at least 3 schools that was the entire school PD time, which means everyone on staff in that school.
I mean, a good example, Ms. Patone, is our all leadership team, right, which is, you know, 70, 75 people. This has been their focus work for 3 years. I mean, we meet monthly. This has been their work. Do I feel 100% confident that everybody's at the same level now? Absolutely not. And this is why some of this is really needing to continue to consult, to work together, to apply what they've learned, to see how that doesn't always go as they planned, and to need to go back and push through it more till you actually are getting to some of the core issues that are causing our Black and brown students to not get access to what they should, or achieve at the levels that they can achieve, you know, or enjoy coming to school, you know, or not experiencing, you know, micro or macro aggressions during the course of their school day. So this is a continued, sustained effort that has to be, and it's not just at the level of practice, it's at your level, it's at policy level. So this is the reason why an equity policy was so important. This is the reason why changing how we hire and who we hire and the process by which we recruit, these are all incredibly important. You know, Jess didn't mention it, but you know, she's been actively engaged in an initiative called Call Me Mister, which is really about trying to develop for a cohort of our young men of color who are interested in wanting to teach, the ability to teach and to actually have their education be free. So it's a partnership between a higher ed institution. It's been very successful. It's a national model. And so Jess has just started down the road with William Smith on it, who's a dean at Wheelock. And so I think, you know, these are beyond the PDs. These are the actions, right? These are the steps that we need to concretely take as a district. And there will be a definitive role for each of you as school committee in helping to push through and get rid of policies that perpetuate racism, institutionalized structural racism, allow turn cheek to bias, we will need your support with all of that, because this is tough work. And it's particularly tough work because some people don't know their role. So as that becomes clearer, it often takes a much more political nature to it. And that's where your role as school committee members will be to help with that. So thank you for offering that on multiple occasions to all of you that have.
Well, thank you for such a deep response. There's a lot that we really got a much better understanding of the depth and the length and the time of this type of work. So very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Carrie, we can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I muted myself because it's possible there was a moment of discord in my house with my kids. Thank you so much. So we now have Ms. Gretchen and then Ms. Barish.
Thank you. My question is about curriculum, which is sort of more of a long-term issue. So I recognize that a lot of what you're talking about is sort of in the now. So I was just curious if there was a plan for some focus groups to look holistically at curriculum and anti-racism, or kind of just generally what the plan was around that.
Yeah, there is. We're starting with the high school, with the department heads, with our curriculum director, and then we're going down to the K to 8s, because we need to take a look at what the curriculum looks like, and we need to view it through the lens of students, and how that makes them feel, and how they can relate, if they can relate. So I think, having a student lens will be crucial. So it's not just adults basically saying, well, we think this is appropriate. The students are the ones that are affected the most by this. So we need to ask them how it makes them feel. Do they see themselves as part of the curriculum? And if the answer is no, then we need to change that, because it's not working for groups of students, especially our Black and brown students. So those are going to be happening, absolutely.
Jess.
So I don't know the formality virtually. I don't know how to, if I could just add to that.
We will just roll with whatever works.
If I could just add to that, one exciting thing is that there are new social studies standards that were released 2018. I hope that's right. I think it's 2018. And so we are in the process as a district of kind of redoing social studies, if you will, and revising our social studies curriculum. And that's something that I'm excited to be leading. So we have 3 teachers, and this is just for pre-K through 8. We have 3 teachers who are content alignment leaders, and this is through Karen Wood's work, and the teacher leadership work. I'm not exactly sure what, I'm sure Karen has a really beautiful title for that. I'm sorry that I'm not remembering it correctly. But these are content alignment leaders. So this is a pathway for educators to take on a leadership role. And they are currently have gone through really taking in and internalizing the current standards. They're thinking deeply about the teaching tolerance standards and ways to incorporate the practices from those, which are wonderful in thinking about anti-bias, anti-racist work, and celebrating diversity, but going beyond that work. And they've just sent out a survey to all pre-K through 8th grade social studies teachers, and or teachers who teach social studies. And they are also some are starting to do focus groups for that. So to add on to what Chad said, there's really deep work going on with social studies in order to make the units and lesson plans revised, but also everything through a lens of equity, every single section in social studies. So that's an exciting place to start as well.
I'm going to just jump in for a moment and to applaud that work. And my hope, my kid just finished APUSH, the American History AP class, and if we want to talk about new curriculum, perhaps we at some point have a discussion about whether we continue with so many AP classes or whether we develop classes like Mr. DePietro's American Identities class, which is, I would argue, not only much more culturally proficient, but does a much better job preparing our students if they're to go into college in terms of writing and content. That is, I don't want to take anything away from these initial steps, but that is a conversation that I would also love to have, that these very prescriptive classes that our students are taking. I will leave it there. So we have Ms. Barish, and then I'm also aware of the time that we have several more agenda items, and it is 9:05, but I don't want to, this is so important. If there are other school committee members who now have other questions or comments, this is, to me, the most important work we're doing on tonight's agenda, so we will get through the rest of it, but don't hesitate. Ms. Barish?
Thank you so much. Thank you for this presentation and for all the work that it reflects. I'm really grateful. So I have two questions. I think they'll be pretty short. I was curious about how students are selected for Build and BAM. Is that a self-selection process? Are they recommended? Do you know, are there enough spots for everyone who's interested? That's what I'm wondering. And then my other question, the superintendent mentioned that we have to hire differently, and I know that you've mentioned the success of our virtual job fairs over the past few weeks and months. I wondered if in those virtual job fairs you saw a difference in the demographics of who is applying, and whether that has made it easier to hire more people of color in our district. Thank you.
The first one, through you, Madam Chair. So the first one, the first job fair, we did not, and we were not happy about it. So we actually then did some really intentional reach outs through HR and some of our connections to organizations that support educators of color to get the word out. So the second one was better. We have a third one that's sort of a mini one because we have we don't have too many positions. So I don't know what the third one will be like, but I mean, a lot of this is getting the word out, right, to the right networks and organizations. And I think, you know, also it's important, you know, for people of color that are teachers and educators and staff in our district to be able to say they're having a good experience. If they're not, then you can have the best job fair in the world. Not gonna matter. So I think it's that. I think it's also creating leadership ladder for our educators of color in a very intentional way, so that you know, educators of color can see Somerville is a place they can grow. So if they're hired in as a teacher and they have an aspiration to be an assistant principal or to be a principal, there's a way for them to be able to get there. So we're really trying on a lot of different levels. I think one of the other piece that's a struggle just in Massachusetts is that there's a very small pool of educators of color for teaching slots. And so this is part why we're looking at like Call Me Mister as a program, because our most diverse population are our paraprofessionals and our students. So if there's a way to be able to provide opportunities for both groups to advance, we should be looking at that as one of the best ways for us to be able to hire a diverse work staff, because they're already a part of us. And I think, you know, happily, several of the paraprofessionals last year, and I believe it's even more so this coming year, will be doing their teaching internship with us. And so that's powerful, because hopefully they are then in the queue to be able to seek jobs as those jobs become available.
Thank you. We have Mr. Green and then Ms. Phillips.
Thank you. I actually have two questions, and in the spirit of, you know, being bolder and being disruptive, we've talked about, you know, there being challenges, but can we really name, like, what's the biggest challenge we faced so far, and what, if anything, we can do to address it in the coming year?
Relative to the issues we're talking about, or relative to hiring?
Right, relative to pushing this stuff out into the field and.
Well, I think it is creating a sense of urgency. That's the same sense of urgency we feel in our staff, and I think it's all corners of the staff. It's everything from our, you know, food service to our after-school providers to our custodians to our secretaries, all the way up to our teaching staff. So that everybody understands they have a role in this, one way or the other. To our bus drivers, right? From the time the child gets onto the bus, if they get onto a bus, or the first face they see when they come into the school, what does that communicate to that student, right? And then what are they hearing throughout the day and experiencing throughout the day? Which direction is it pushing a child of color? Is it welcoming and accepting and building up and the feeling that I can do anything? Or is it not welcoming, tearing down, picking apart? So I think it's helping everybody understand they have a critical role in this. I think, we're at a sort of a point too within the district, whereas Jess stated, schools are at different levels, right? So they each have formed equity plans. Some have done a lot of PD and a lot of group work and processing as staff, and then others are still on the continuum beginning or near the beginning. So I think it's how to best support each of the schools so that they can make that step to the next level. I think this is why just having a team, whether it's equity ambassadors or whatever they know I'm terrible at titles, so whatever the term that the field decides on, I think that role will be important because we can train that team, and in many ways that team can help to be ambassadors back in the schools and help Jess not have to be 10 different places at one time, but really help everybody to own a piece of the work. And so I think operationalizing that will help to solve some of the problem of just bandwidth. I also think, as just we've talked about a little bit, it's when there is I don't know that there's been anything as crazy as what we witnessed with George Floyd, but when you're in the midst of a crisis, for all intents and purposes, a crisis, sometimes people get paralyzed in the crisis and they don't know how to respond. So they stay silent, they don't participate, they're afraid if they say something, it'll be worse. And so I think, frankly, this is, helping our white staff to understand listening is a key piece. But beyond listening, it's also working to identify their role in all of this and how they can help in the process, and that it's on them to learn what they don't know. So I think there's a number of things right now, Andre, that are just tough. And, we're going to, needless to say, we're virtual, which doesn't make any of this any easier. And so you can't naturally bring people together, which is what is often healing and helps to facilitate the dialogue. So I think, we have to work through a lot of these issues. But I think naming what they are and then having some strategies for each of them is what we're attempting to do. And that's like the first step of sharing with you guys tonight for the future piece, but also seeking input, right? So this is, why we're going to be having the conversations with our educators of color to see what their feeling is right now relative to the field, our students of color. I think this is where the town halls will be really important to be able to try to get a lot of this information so that we then can do some action planning to be able to be supportive.
I do have a follow-up.
Okay.
Actually, to the chair, actually.
Yes, sir.
Which is, in the school year to come, can we somehow build into our schedules a school committee time to talk with our educators of color, our students of color explicitly, so we can hear directly from them?
Be great.
Yes, and my first inclination would be, well, we always invite people to school committee. I don't think this is the forum to have necessarily the most honest conversations. And so we will talk with educators on how to best do that. I have talked with Danny McLaughlin too about how to continue those discussions with teen empowerment. We've been doing it once a year, but that's not nearly enough. We just get, most of the time we get to the being who we each are and building a little bit of trust in that meeting, and then we wait another year. But I do think there's going to be a lot of different ways of doing that. I'd like to talk with the superintendent and Dr. Davis about that. I also, we all have different schools in our wards, and however we do that, but I do think it is, I appreciate the importance and the effort that goes into when we do office hours, but I am not looking for people to come to us, but for us to go to them. Are we in agreement? Yes. I didn't even need to ask you the question, Andre. Okay. Thank you for that. Was there any more? Are you getting?
I think I'm good for now.
Okay. Thank you. We have Ms. Phillips, and if there are always time for questions on this. This is the important work. If not, we will move on to the next item. Ms. Phillips.
Thank you, Chair. This, I think, is really a question for Dr. Boston Davis. And I apologize because on the one hand, I think it's totally minor, and on the other hand, I think actually maybe it's not. But on the rules subcommittee, we've been thinking through policies that need to change in light of our equity policy and the district's commitment to equity. And one of the things I've been thinking about is our school improvement planning policy. Right, as you know, we've got an academic goal and a wellness goal, and I was pleased to see a number of our schools take their wellness goals and really make them an equity goal this year. But I'm wondering how you think about, before I go advocating for this, I'm wondering what you think about the possibilities of bringing the equity planning process into our school improvement planning process, so it's just one plan and it's all front and center.
So a few of us are smiling because we just had this conversation about, well, now maybe 5 hours ago, but we were just talking about this. So definitely, actually Kenya Avant brought up the thought of how are we making this, making sure these kind of two separate plans right now are complementary. How do we make sure that principals are not like duplicating and leadership teams are not duplicating their efforts, and being thoughtful about how these two things currently are working together. So what we kind of ended with is that Kenya and I will spend some time this summer thinking about, regardless if a policy shift happens, how are we ensuring that these two kind of plans are work together and do so in a way that's effective and helpful. And some principals have actually already started doing that. They changed the templates to make it work for them, as they should, and they've kind of cite in their school improvement plan, and then here is the equity plan as that fits in, because kind of your school improves as equity increases, and actually, if you're thinking about equity at large, you should be thinking about your school improvement. So one fits into the other. I can probably make an argument for both ways, but and like I said, there are a couple principals who are already kind of really thoughtfully doing that. But I think on our end, what we'll definitely do is Kenya and I, with the guidance of the superintendent and the assistant superintendent, will be thoughtful about how to make sure, at the very least, the plans really complement and work and kind of talk to each other, if you will. And so I'll stop there because I think I'm just going to repeat myself. But that's something that we're definitely thinking about. And I think while some folks have thought about how to make it work, I think we can be a lot more thoughtful to make it work for everyone in that way. So yes. And it can come from our planning end. So I don't know if necessarily a policy shift is necessary, but I don't know. Maybe the superintendent has thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, you did a great job, Jess. I mean, I think that's where we are. We need to think about how to streamline it. I think the plans will only be as good as the school community is in activating the plan and carrying it through and understanding it and having input to it. So I think that those are the nuances that we have to sort of work through, the nuts and bolts, as they sort of come together. And, we even talked about the explicitity of potential of like an equity goal, but not wanting equity to ever get siloed, but rather stay in the center. So I think there's some things that we need to talk through. I think we need to hear from the field as well about it, to see what makes sense on the field for them. But we can report back when we get to the point that we feel like we have the direction that we want to be able to go with it.
Thank you.
I'm going to just jump in. One is to say, Dr. Boston Davis, your enthusiasm with that question came through, and it says a lot about how you approach your work. And I also wanted to compliment Ms. Phillips we talked earlier about some principals being data nerds. I actually think I'm a data nerd, but a policy nerd. And we have added equity policy. We've added a transgender policy, both for students and staff. But I do think it is critical for us to spend some time to go through what already exists and what needs to be updated, what needs to be, not just what we need to invent and add, but what we need to jettison. And I think COVID is I hope at the end of it that there are many different things that we can figure out, that we don't have to keep doing things that haven't worked just because we've always done them in that way. It's the same thing with some of our policies, and I know that policy book is thick, but it is worth it to go through. So thank you for bringing that idea up, Ms. Phillips. And with that, I wanted to thank Mr. Mazza and Dr. Boston Davis for another long day, but also doing such important work and leading us. And thank you that you've laid a foundation. I mean, we are nowhere near done, but especially in these times, having had that foundation and to be able to respond in some way in a more, I just lost my whole train, wouldn't have happened if you hadn't led the groundwork. And so I know we are all tired from the school year, but I'm also excited to see what work you do over the summer and bring back to us. And by us, I mean the entire district. So thank you so much, you two, for joining us.
You are welcome.
Good job.
Bye, Jess.
Get some sleep, Jess.
Superintendent, was there more to your report, or does that conclude the superintendent's report?
My report. I have a few other happy announcements, but I think I will wait until the next meeting to share those.
Okay, thank you so much. So then we are now on to the reports of the subcommittees. They are both finance and facilities, and I'm going to ask the chair of that committee, Mr. Green, to, before you give your reports, if you could outline the ever-changing budget process and what we have landed on. And I'm sorry, did Dr. Ackman have a question for the guests? I just saw a question come up.
I did. It wasn't necessarily for the guests, but you had mentioned our transgender bathroom policy, and to the best of my knowledge, the amended policy is still tabled, and that we.
I'm not talking specifically to the bathroom policy, but a year or two ago we had no policies, and so that we've been creating policies and then realizing every time we do one step, what else needs to be added and what needs to be jettisoned. But I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, sorry. To that, it's just a reminder that I think in our last in-person meeting, there was a policy that had been voted out of rules that was amending our transgender policy, bathroom policy, that never got voted through. And so ideally before the end of this academic year, if we could do that, I'm happy to go through and find the policy if we need to.
That would be wonderful, and if you could send it to
Dr. Curley.
Did you want to weigh in?
Just that, no, I remember exactly what you're talking about, Dr. Ackman, and I think if Dr. Ackman could just work with Dr. Curley, then I think we can figure out what to bring forward.
Happy to.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you so much, and thank you for your memory of pre-COVID life. So item number 7, report of subcommittees, Finance and Facilities Chair Green, take it away.
Sure. As part of the chair's request, I want to start off by merely explaining where we are in this most unusual of budget cycles. Tomorrow, at our Finance and Facilities Committee meeting at 6, is that correct? 6, yeah, at 6
That is
p.m.
correct.
The superintendent will be reviewing our budget for this fiscal year. as we're going to go through in my reports, this budget comes through a series of iterations. So there will, there'll always be some, it's a moving document, so there'll be some movement to it, but it is a document that we are mostly familiar with. That being said, per state law, we have to give a week's notice on the public hearing on this on the budget. It is our lawyer's opinion and the city's lawyer's opinion that the requirement that notice be given through a newspaper actually refers to the physical newspaper. So online postings do not count. Because of that, the earliest that we can have the earliest that we can legally and ethically have a budget hearing is this Wednesday, June
Next
7th.
Wednesday.
Yes, next Wednesday, June 17th. There was an announcement earlier today that it would be actually Monday, June 15th. That is not correct. It will be Wednesday, June 17th at 6:30. There will be the links already been shared. It will be virtual like this. People will be welcome to come and share their feedback. It will have the document as of tomorrow, outlines the budget. If people have questions between tomorrow and then they make their comments on the following Wednesday, please send them to me. We will make sure that on the budget documents, etc., my email address will be on it. Please reach out to me.
And Mr. Green, when you say please reach out to me, you were not just talking about school committee members, you were talking about the public should send their feedback to you.
That
and
is
you will get it to
100%
the rest
correct.
of us. Okay.
Right.
Just to
And
be,
if people have questions, send it to me, and we will try to answer them before public hearings. Public hearings aren't actually about answering questions. Additionally, we may some of us members may try to have additional office hours between Tuesday and Wednesday. I certainly will. I haven't figured out when it will be yet, as a place where people can give feedback and ask questions.
And when you say between Tuesday and Wednesday, you were not talking about this week. You're talking about Tuesday we'll have the presentation
Tuesday,
of the
tomorrow,
entire budget,
and Wednesday 17th.
and then Wednesday the public hearing, so that the budget will be presented in great detail tomorrow night, and then it's to get more public feedback. I just want to make sure, because Tuesday and Wednesday, that we're talking about 12. Thank you.
100% correct. We're giving ourselves 8 days to collect information, collect feedback before 8 days coming the public hearing before we as a committee reconvene on the following Thursday, the 18th, where the hope is we will be able to vote on a budget so that we can pass it on to the city with the hope that they can get their process done in a quickly manner as well.
Thank you for that.
Now, the good news is our reports for the 2 meetings are very short because, again, good documents means that the data kind of is filled out by the next meeting. So I'll start with the report for the May 11th meeting. And just for speed, I will go through both reports, then ask for one motion to approve them both.
Okay, thank you for the heads up.
So for the Finance Committee's meeting of May 11th, in attendance were myself, Ms. Krebsman, Dr. Ackman, Dr. Phillips, Ms. Patone, Ms. Barish, Ms. Norman, and Mayor Curtin. Also in attendance were Superintendent Skipper, Assistant Superintendent Mazza, and Finance Director Gorski. Meeting came to order at 6:01 p.m. The meeting began with an update from the mayor on the city's fiscal situation. Sorry, that background noise kind of threw me off. They were still awaiting guidance from DOR on what a partial budget looks, DOR being Department of Revenue, excuse me, on what a partial budget might look like if it were to be a 1 or 3 month budget. Unfortunately, local aid projections at the time still looked to be low, so the city was estimating a 20% reduction in aid from the state. Questions were raised about the city's supply of what's called free cash. The mayor stated there is approximately $17 million in free cash. The city's policy has historically been to try to reduce the usage of free cash to pay for multi-year ongoing expenses. But the expectation was that some of that money would have to be used this year to compensate for revenue shortfalls in fiscal year 21. More information would be forthcoming. We then moved on to the April bill rolls, which a motion was passed by Ms. Krebsman and seconded by Dr. Ackman to approve them. That motion passed unanimously. Director Gorski then walked through a modified level service budget. Level service budget remains how much money it would take just to roll over existing services. As part of the guidance from the city, this district is/was compiling a variety of budget scenarios: level service, level funding, which is the same money as last year or after this year, and 3%, 5%, and 7% cuts from level service. Director Gorski identified some discretionary spending to be rolled back in level service to come up with a level service budget that comes to a 1.67% increase. In future meetings, we expect to see more budget scenarios pending guidance from the city and the state on what form the final budget should take. And with the remaining time, the chair entertained questions from the audience as part of our commitment to transparency in this unusual budget cycle. Before entertaining a motion from Dr. Ackerman, seconded by Mr. Tone, that passed unanimously to adjourn at 6:54 p.m. That brings us to the Finance Facilities meeting of May 27, 2020. In attendance were myself, Ms. Krepshin, Dr. Ackerman, Dr. Phillips, Ms. Patone, Ms. Barish, and Ms. Norman. Also in attendance were Superintendent Skipper, Superintendent Maza, and Finance Director Gorski. This meeting came to order at 7 o'clock p.m. The first item was an informational update from the Finance Director regarding newly released CDC guidance on reopening schools. While we still await DESE guidance, which we got started this weekend, here in Massachusetts, our initial read on the CDC guidelines is that COVID preparation will not be cheap. And while SPS is currently on the hook to receive between $800,000 and $1 million from the CARES Act, that money is scheduled to last 3 years and does not project to cover all needed expenditures. We then moved on to review a proposed level funding budget as opposed to a level service budget. Of our prior meeting, this budget presumes that our total funding remains level from fiscal year 20. This budget remained very much a draft, which is why we didn't get a physical copy of it. Indeed, it's still required at the time of the meeting, additional $60,000 in savings to actually be level funding. However, if this were the direction the district would go, the full nature of this savings and the proposed staffing will be made available to members of the public in advance of the next meeting. Since that's not the way we are going and we are proposing a budget in the next meeting, that won't happen. And again, after taking questions from the public, there was a motion by Dr. Ackerman, seconded by Ms. Barish, to adjourn at 8:11 p.m. With that, I move to accept the financial facilities report for the meetings of May 11th and May 27th, 2020.
Seconded.
This is Alana, I second.
There is a motion by Mr. Green, seconded by Ms. Krepchin. Is there any discussion or questions?
I see a question from Ms. Patone.
Yes, that is not on the reports, but so can we do the reports, then we'll go to that question?
Sure.
So there's a motion by Mr. Green, seconded, or we can just do it now. Can you read it?
So Ms. Patone asks, although she can come on and ask, but I'll read it. Can you share when the budget will be posted publicly on the SPS website? My understanding is that will be at some point tomorrow, correct, Superintendent?
Correct, yes.
And when it is?
I don't have an exact time, but I will talk to Mr. Gorski.
Thank you.
And when it is, we'll make sure all members are aware, and we can all begin the process of publicizing it for the public.
And I would, okay, let's do it. So there's a motion by Mr. Green, seconded by Ms. Krepchin. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Dr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Krepshin?
Yes.
President McLaughlin? Mayor Curtatone? Mr. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Barish?
Yes.
Ms. Patone?
Yes.
Dr. Ackman?
Yes.
Ms. Norman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. And I would encourage all of us in whatever ways we can, in addition to the announcements that go out through the central office, the importance of tomorrow night's finance meeting and the date of the budget hearing. So that would be terrific. We are now moving on to item 8 of unfinished business, which the only item I have is the mask policy, or we maybe call it the face covering policy, and I'm going to continue to table it. I have a call into MAAC about, is there, anyone developed one yet? We would like to have something in place for the fall, in guidance in line with the DESI guidance. And there's also some question of whether the city ordinance, how does that come into play with the school? So more to come on that. The next item is new business, and the first is a resolution in support of education funding in the COVID-19 era. And I don't have it. Would someone like to speak to it? I wasn't at the last meeting, and Mr. Green.
Sure. Basically, this is being seen as a companion piece to the resolution Ms. Krepschen put out in our last meeting, calling on the federal government to act. This is also calling on the state government to also act to support funding. I noticed that in my rush to get this done, I know my notes at the very bottom, so the last bullet point should be struck in as not part of the resolution. Does it make sense for me to read it at this meeting out loud or at the next meeting?
So there's some edits you would like to make?
There's a typo that needs to be erased.
Do you have it in front of you now? Can you do that now? And then we can, at the last meeting.
Yeah, I can get the edit to the typo to Miss Santiago, relevant to. I can read it now if you want me to. I can read it next meeting, which would be the second reading.
Why don't we do it at the next meeting? Thank you very much for your attention to detail. The next item under new business is the memorization committee ordinance. We need 2 volunteers from the school committee to join this committee. They want representation, and so it is naming things, naming buildings, naming plaques, all of that. And so there is some enthusiasm to get this going quickly. You do not need to. Oh, just one person. Pardon me. Only one person. And Ms. Patoni, you have a question?
I had a question. I had a question about the resolution, and I know we didn't go into detail. I was just, this is probably through you, Chair Norman, to Mr. Green. He said that it was state focused. I was just curious, I'm assuming, did we already send the other one out and publish it, or is there any reason not to combine the 2 into one resolution? It's just a question.
I believe that we've already passed the federal one, and it's actually already been distributed. So this would be a separate resolution.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. I apologize for not seeing that. So we are looking for a volunteer for the memorialization committee. It meets 4 times a year. I would love to have a name in the next 2 or 3 days, and so you don't have to volunteer right now, but we do need someone. Sarah, Dr. Phillips, do you have a question? Dr. Phillips, are you there?
Oh, sorry, I'm always talking on mute. It was on Andre's resolution. I can hold it.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, so that is Memorialization Committee. The next item of business is the FY20 scale ADP diplomas request. Can I get a motion?
This is Laura Patone. I'm making a motion to approve on the superintendent's recommendation the fiscal year 20 scale ADP diploma request for Ronald Omar Santos Morales, Eli Billion, and Samia Shabi.
Can I get a second?
Solana, second.
There's a motion by Ms. Patone, seconded by Ms. Krepchen. Are there any discussions? Superintendent, can we get a roll call vote to approve the diplomas?
Certainly. Dr. Phillips?
Enthusiastically, yes.
Ms. Krepchen?
Yes.
President McLaughlin? Mayor Curtatone? Mr. Green,
Yes.
Ms. Barish,
Yes.
Ms. Patone,
Yes, and congratulations.
Dr. Ackman,
Yes, of course.
and Ms. Norman.
Absolutely. Yes.
Motion
And
carried.
congratulations.
These three.
Yay. More graduates. Thank you so much. The next item is item D, acceptance of donations. Can I get a motion, please?
This is Andre Green. I move to accept the superintendent's recommendation to accept with gratitude the following donations. $500 from Haicha and Josh Sheldon, Somerville, Massachusetts Community Schools. $200 from Amanda Reichel, Somerville, Massachusetts Community Schools. $200 from Andre Pelletier, Somerville, Massachusetts for Community Schools. $300 from Jenny Chin, Somerville, Massachusetts for Community Schools. And $1,000 from Erica Zarowin of Somerville, Massachusetts, the Somerville Child Care Center.
Can I get a second?
This is Laura Patone. I'm seconding that motion.
There is a motion by Mr. Green, seconded by Ms. Patone. Is there any discussion of the donations? Superintendent Skipper, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Certainly, Madam Chair, Dr. Phillips,
Yes.
Ms. Krepton,
Yes.
President McLaughlin, Mayor Curtatone, Mr. Green,
Yes.
Ms. Barish,
Yes.
Ms. Patone,
Yes.
Dr. Ackman,
Yes.
Ms. Norman.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you for the donation.
Thank you so much. We now on to items from board members. Do any board members? Mr. Green has a new business item. Mr. Green?
This feels a bit anticlimactic, but I think in response to the feedback we've received from constituents, including for me personally, Kenya Albeza, one of my constituents, and this moment we are in, I think it's important that we officially put on our policy agenda, revisiting policies regarding policing in Somerville public schools. And I know that we have a fairly deliberative process on how to do that. But this is me officially saying we need to begin that conversation.
Thank you for raising that. Dr. Ackman, as chair of the policy rules and boy, it's getting late. Dr. Ackman, would you take that item up as in the rules committee?
Gladly.
As the first place. Thank you. And then Superintendent Skipper, this is going to, obviously we're going to need some data and information. And so if school committee members have specific questions or information requests, they can send them to me or Dr. directly to
Through Madam Chair. I mean, they always would CC you, but they can send them to me and Dr. Curley, and we'll get them. So we're working on a request from at least one, if not two, of the school committee members around the STEPS initiative and some other pointed questions. So we'll get that information to you as timely as possible.
Thank you. Dr. Phillips?
It was an information request about the MOU between the police and the school department for the SRO, so I'll just email that.
Fantastic. Ms. Patone?
I had a question about, I didn't know, and maybe I'm just overlooking that there was policy around that. I was more interested in just the programming in general, the history of the programming and the efficacy of the programming. So I'm just asking, is there policy about it that exists right now, and does it need to go to rules, or does it sit in regular?
Let me say this back to you to see if I'm getting, you're looking for more information more quickly than going through an entire policy procedure. And also my understanding was Mr. Green was asking for a request, a deeper dive on the policy. So you're looking for something more current information that perhaps by the end of the school year, or
I wanted to understand what the programming actually exists right now, and I wasn't aware that there was specific policy around that programming. I don't remember there being a policy around STEPS or a policy around policing, so that's why I was questioning this sitting within rules, but maybe I'm mistaken and Mr. Green knows more than I do, which that's not an uncommon thing. So
You know what? And I could be wrong on that too. Superintendent, would you like to weigh in and shed some clarity on this for us?
Sure. So I think there's two different things. There's programming, which does exist. So for instance, the STEPS program. So one of the questions that was asked was to provide background around how it came to be. Is there a budget for it? Does the school department have budget for it? Is it entirely on SPD? What are if there's data outcomes, what have the data outcomes been? So there's kind of that piece. And then I think it's looking through our policy manual to see any specific references relative to community policing that exists about how and when police are in our buildings. So we will go through the policies to see what that looks like.
So almost, I apologize. So two different things. Thank you.
That was the distinction. I would also ask that the policy rules, when we're looking at policy, to also look at any of the student handbooks to see if there's any references in there as well. Mr. Green.
I would also add to that, the question is, should we have policy on these things, right? Like, it's not just do we currently, but do we want to have policy? Do we, if, for example, as was asked today, if we decided we wanted to say we will not allow police programs in our schools, that would be school committee policy.
Correct. So we can share what we find in terms of the references, and then it'll be up to school committee to have a conversation about if there is an absence of policy, what is the topic, what is the data that we would want to collect around that to inform us, etc.
Are there any other questions or clarifications around this topic that any school committee member has? No. Okay. Are there any other items from board members? Dr. Ackman, are there condolences?
There are. The Somerville School Committee would like to extend its deepest condolences to the families of Martin Moran, father of Maureen Moran, library aide at Argenziano, Margaret Wallace, mother of Hugh Wallace, Somerville High School vocational teacher, Marion Block, worked closely with the special education department as a psychologist, Maura McMahon, sister of Holly McMahon, teacher at the Winter Hill, and David Arlington, father of Michael Arlington, teacher at the Healy School.
Thank you. And with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, and good night, all.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.